everyone. My name is Wendee Ulmer.
And I'm Sharon Pierce.
And we want to welcome you to You Can Handle the Truth. And we are in December.
Already.
You know what's coming up.
Oh, Christmas.
Oh, all the Christmas crazy that's going to happen between now and December 25th. And even after December 25th, there's so much shopping. A lot of people wait until the 26th to do their shopping.
Yes, they do.
There's some good prices that go on. A lot of 50%. Hobby Lobby is awesome. They start cutting out that Christmas stuff and cutting, the prices on Christmas trees and all of that stuff. That's the time to get a tree. So that's my promotion of Hobby Lobby. And no, they didn't pay us to say that.
No, but boy, do I love that shop. I love it.
I do too. I can find the neatest things there. And every couple of months, things get switched out. And it's like, oh, I need that hammer that's shaped like a cactus.
Yes.
Well, we are going to start with news that can shake us up, okay? Because we're going to be talking about getting shooken, okay? And I was online, and the last week of November was very productive as far as news goes. So I want to put some news out that maybe people haven't heard about. The first one, Sharon, is right up your alley. It's man breaks world record for the largest iced coffee. It has 3,200 espresso shots in it.
Oh, my goodness.
I don't know that that's enough.
Maybe for a little while.
I mean,
maybe a little while.
Like, I know a lot of tired moms out there that would just swim in this thing. It is 11 feet tall and 3,200 shots of espresso, 1,200 pounds of ice, and 378 liters of milk. What's liters?
Is it close to a quart?
We don't do liters.
In fourth grade math, I think we had to learn the metric system, and then that was the last time I ever picked it up, unfortunately.
Right. Yeah. It's one of those things, we use gallons and quarts, and even that's hard for me to keep track of. But I have watched this. The guy that did this, his name is Nick DiGiovanni, and I watch him on YouTube. And he is a celebrity chef, and he does these things where he rates like cooking things like supplies and things like that, and he teaches you how to cook steak, the perfect steak or the perfect burger. He's really good to watch. He's clean, and so I enjoy that. He's the one who did this Guinness Book of World Record, so happy for him. That might be too much coffee, though, even for me.
I think it would be too much for me.
3,200. Now, here's my second story.
This is so bad.
Okay, imagine you've been invited to someone's house for Thanksgiving. But now we're in the Christmas season, so it could be a holiday party. Someone says, hey, come to my house. You trust them? Do you trust... When you get invited to a party, Sharon, do you trust that they're going to prepare your food properly?
I do. I think that they are going to have thawed it properly, cooked it to the correct temperature, and not be cross-contaminating items.
Right. Like, I get nervous. Do people know that, wipe down your counters and, salmonella, chicken, don't cross-contaminate things. Wash your hands. If you touch meat, wash your hands.
It says right in the Bible, you don't use the same knife to cut up your chicken as you do your veggies.
God's not wrong.
He's right.
He's right about that. So you've been to my house, and I want to guarantee you I've never done what I'm about to read to you, okay? Ready, folks? You're not going to believe this, but it's going to make you think twice about whether or not you want to go to anybody's house for any kind of event ever again. Okay? There was a food influencer, and this is I'm so grossed out. Food influencer's toilet turkey recipe for Thanksgiving horrifies followers. Dun dun dun. Okay, I've got to, because it's already out and she's an influencer, so we're going to say her name. There are pictures of Kate Heinzelman. I'm going to say it, Heinzelman, prepping the turkey in the bowl of her toilet. She's putting celery and seasoning and buttering, the whole works. This lady is showing how she actually has, not on top of her toilet, in the toilet bowl. Now, this is what, again, this is her quote. She said, "Don't freak out. Germs are killed at 140 degrees, and I cooked this at 300 degrees.
I don't even understand the logic behind that. What is, you don't have a big enough bowl? What?
A sink? Take it outside and roll it in the dirt. That would be more preferable to sticking the turkey in the toilet. I can only imagine what... I can't imagine what was going on in her head. And I don't think this was a promotional thing. I think that this whole idea that the germs are killed at 140 degrees and I cooked it at 300 degrees in the oven, I don't think she understands the logic that you cook it till it reaches an internal temperature.
Yes.
Of 140, right? Isn't that the
Yes.
thing? So just because you turn your oven on at 300 and cook it for an hour doesn't mean that those germs are going to just magically fall off of there.
Oh.
So, Sharon, I don't ever want to go out again. I don't want to go to McDonald's. I don't want to go to Chick-fil-A. I don't want to go to Olive Garden.
It does not make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. But have you ever been somewhere where they're doing food prep and they come out in their gloves and they're doing all kinds of crazy stuff with the same gloves and then go, it's like...
or wiping their nose.
Yeah. Like touching the doorknobs and everything. Like, no,
Yeah.
don't do that.
No, we haven't been out to eat in forever. We just don't do it. It horrifies me. So at least I know if I buy the food from the grocery store, I can take it home. I know that if it doesn't smell right, I'm not eating it. If it doesn't look right, I'm not eating it. Like we just spent money on, going to Costco for our Thanksgiving stuff, and the Costco eggs have been recalled. I don't know if you all knew that, but Costco eggs were recalled, the Kirkland eggs. So if you live in the East, over there, East Coast, throw your eggs away. But cucumbers, there's been a recall. We can't trust our food supply.
Not really.
It's time to get a farm.
That's the best, if we could actually manage that. But I don't seem to be able to produce more than 2 or 3 zucchini at a time.
Yeah.
It's like
Farmers, we are not.
No, we would starve if it was up to Ryan and I.
So, hopefully, I read this, I was shooken.
To the core.
To the core, I was shooken. So how am I not supposed to be shooken when there are people around me who are doing crazy stuff that I am not in control of? Because I can't control whether or not you put your turkey in the toilet and then feed it to me. I am shooken. How? And there are other things going on in the world. You and I were reading this morning that kind of shookens us. We're reading a lot about how the Middle East is just imploding. Syria imploding. Turkey getting in on their 2 cents. Iraq came out this morning and said, hey, we're not going to let this stuff just go by. So what is Iraq going to do? What's Iran going to do? What's Turkey going to do? What's Syria going to do? They're heading towards Damascus. I was looking up all of those different groups when all of these different groups that are within Syria that are coming against Assad and his people, linked to ISIS, Al-Qaeda, stuff I haven't heard of, but all of these factions, 32,000 here, 5,000 men there, who are coming together in this coalition to cut the head off the snake, so to speak, of Assad and his people. And who's going to get involved with that? And Heath was talking about, Pastor Heath was mentioning it, I think it was Sunday night, the atrocities that are happening.
Yes.
Just all-out murder. And I don't see a backlash like what they were doing with Israel. Like
No.
with Israel defending itself, and all of the countries and the people, the leaders, the groups who are coming out against Israel being in Gaza and fighting in Gaza and Lebanon. Where's the outrage? Where's the same outrage towards Israel that we've seen over the last year? Where is that outrage towards what's happening in Syria right now? Do we see it?
There doesn't appear to be any at all, and Russia's fully involved.
Mm-hmm.
It's very interesting.
Russia is always involved. South Korea is imploding right now. They've got tanks outside their parliament. So their leader in South Korea, the South Korean leader, and his name doesn't come to my mind right now. I want to say it's like Yoon or something. But yeah, he's shut down the government and put shutting down people's freedoms and such in order to protect their freedoms. That always works well.
Oh, we've heard that before.
We have heard that before. Seems to be a running theme since 2020.
It's for your own
For
good.
your own good. Yeah. And I have to wonder, okay, so here's where my mind goes. South Korea, what's happening there? North Korea has sent troops to help Russia against Ukraine. And who's in the midst of all of that? Russia.
Yes.
I did my best Biden impression. Russia. Right?
Yeah.
Like, that's... Ooh, they got their fingers in a lot of pies, don't they?
They do, and China's always in the background as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So it's interesting. So are we shooken yet?
We can feel shaken, but if we have our firm foundation in Jesus, we know that He is in control. God is in control.
You say that, Sharon. But then there's also things going on in people's personal lives.
Oh, yes.
And those are the things. It's easy to disassociate ourselves from things that are going on halfway around the world, but then there are things that are happening in our own backyards, like the toilet turkey. I just threw up a little. So we're heading into the holiday season, and there are so many people who are just feeling overwhelmed with the holidays. Not just there's all of the shopping stuff that needs to be done, but there's family drama. There's people who are actually, families that are split because of the election that we just had.
Yes.
There are people who are dealing with difficult financial strains. Of course, folks are having a hard time with family dynamics changing because they've lost loved ones, or they have loved ones who are battling with horrible health conditions. I'm gonna throw you under the bus. No, you've been hit with like every cold and sick bug that's come along, and that's stressful.
It
when
is
you
stressful.
don't feel good. I mean, it's not a big thing, but
No.
it's the little. It's like somebody flicking at you, or getting bit by a flea, and you can't find it, or a mosquito. And
That
it just
mosquito buzz or
Yeah.
that dripping sink. It's just that constant.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it'll shook
It
in you.
wears me. It does. It wears me down, and I use it as an excuse not to read a couple of days the Bible, and it is not. It is not the way to go for me. It is. I need my big dose of Bible. I do the Bible study, but it's not the same as reading the Bible.
Right.
You really need that quiet time with God, and I would be kind of flaky about it, and I would decide, well, I'm tired this morning. I'll do it before I go to bed, and I fall asleep.
Yeah.
And that's not good quiet time with God. I've talked about that with you before.
Right.
It's not. I'm not trying to be disrespectful with God, but I would be so. I don't think He thinks the same way I as a human think. But if I was trying to talk to you and you were nodding off, I would think, Wendy,
Right.
you're not interested. Why are you even bothered to talk to me right now?
Oh, what'd you say? Yeah, that's offensive. Yeah.
Yeah. So and it really it shakes my my contentment, which is what we're talking about. And I let the cares of the world creep in even more. And so the whole thing, we know that life goes on. We do.
Right.
We both have things going on with our extended family, our church family,
Right.
our friends.
Right.
And it does shake our
jobs,
contentment sometimes.
yes. And I think you bring in a great point, is that when your contentment is shaken, you need to go to that place with Christ, that quiet place where you can allow Him to minister to you, because that's what He does. He didn't put us here on earth so, as He says, so you can go sit in the pew and check it off your list. I did my Sunday best there, and then try to work the rest of the week on your own, or try to get through a situation on your own. Christ gave us His Spirit so that He could walk with us through our circumstances, whatever they are, and He uses His Word to speak to us, to speak to our hearts and our minds, and to encourage us and to sanctify us and to keep us going. So, as you said, we are learning about today being content. So, number one thing, being content. Stop. This is my my advice. Stop depending on the things of this world to satisfy you. We get shaken on things because we are expecting other sources from outside of God to bring us joy, to bring us happiness, to bring us contentment. So, and people, we can put that on people and saying, you need to satisfy me. You need to be the place in which I find my happiness and my joy. This job needs to be the place in which I find my happiness and my joy and my fulfillment. My bank account, man, when my bank account gets hit, I start to go, okay, and that's where the rubber meets the road.
It really does.
When those things aren't going the way that I want them to go and I expect them to go, then I'm shaken. My contentment is shaken. And I want you to share your verse. I'm going to share mine first.
Okay.
Just because that's how I am. 1 Timothy 6, 7 through 8. This is what Paul says. Now godliness with contentment is great gain, for we brought nothing into the world, and it is certain that we can carry nothing out. And having food and clothing, with these we shall be content. And I love that because Paul is marrying two concepts there. He's marrying godliness together, which is pursuing God and God's ways, pursuing Him, and then contentment, which is keeping our focus on God. So it's this godliness and the contentment together. Not only pursuing God, but keeping our focus on Him tends to keep me from insisting on my own way or protesting when things aren't going my way or how I perceive they should be. I tend to get a lot more self-focused when things are going good and when things are going bad.
Oh, yes.
I can be self-focused. So it really is an all-around thing. It's a battle to try to stay God-focused because, as you were talking about a couple of weeks ago, there's always something vying for our attention. When you were talking about those billboards on the side of the highway, there's always something in life that says, hey, look at me. Pay attention to me. And as women, because we're relational, we tend to put our focus on others and put our focus on the things that maybe aren't the healthiest for us. We've always got to come back to that number one relationship, which is Christ.
It has to be him. And you know, one of the biggest things that can be a distraction is that cell phone that we carry around because we are relational.
Right.
And it's so easy to get into that. You have that notification bell on, and you're tied into these social feeds, and you're always inundated with, I'm not doing this good enough, or look at what they're doing. I have a tendency to compare sometimes, like I'm not that person. I don't decorate that well, or I don't prepare the beautiful meal. I don't prepare it in the toilet ever.
What's wrong with you? This is the new thing.
I think that it's funny that I did write that same one down, but there was one in Philippians that it didn't specifically say contentment, but Philippians 4:6, be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And then 4:7, and the peace of God that surpasses all comprehension shall guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. And 4:8, finally,
Woohoo!
4:8, finally, brethren, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is of good repute, if there is anything that is worthy of praise, let your mind dwell on these things.
Oh, that's so good. That hits contentment right in the heart.
Because to me, that gives me the instruction on what I need to do to find contentment. I love the verses that say this, because contentment is a state of mind. It is a place we need to go with Jesus.
Right.
And here, Paul is explaining it to me.
It's specific.
Yes.
It's very detailed.
And I love that about Paul. And there's many places, but Jesus tells us. He's quoted directly in Matthew and Luke about, don't fear about this. Look at the raven is taken care of. All these things are taken care of.
Right. Jesus
tells us, and Paul then just goes into this great detail about, and this is how you do it.
Right. I love that too. You're absolutely right that the focus there is going to be on Jesus Christ. It's about focus. And so I know for me, I was hit on that this morning about just being focused. And I did want to say I was reading Oswald Chambers. Here is what he said that really struck me about being focused. He says, once you are rooted in reality, nothing can shake you. If your faith is rooted only in your experiences, anything that happens is likely to disturb it. But nothing can ever disturb God or the almighty reality of redemption. And that's what your verse is all about, isn't it? Is that whatever is noble and good and right and of good repute, right? Like those things. Well, you can look around you and see that everything can be falling apart. And maybe your circumstances aren't what you dreamed that they would be. But the almighty reality of redemption, if you can focus on that, where you were headed and where God reached down in that black pit that you were in and drew you up and said, I'm going to give you a new heart. I'm going to remove that heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. Let's sit down and, our favorite, let's sit down and reason together. And let me explain myself. I want you to know me. The Creator says, I want you to know who I am. And I want to impart my righteousness on you. And I want to share eternity with you. Do you have any people in your life who look at you and say, I can't wait to spend eternity with you? Now, and I'm not talking about you, Sharon. Stop laughing. I'm saying I'm a hard person to deal with, okay?
Oh.
So for me, my husband, there's times when he's got to walk away and go in the other room because I can be hard to deal with. And I'm sure that my kids feel the same way. But there is the God who created everything, who stretched out his arms on the cross, who said, my house is your house. I've gone to prepare a place for you. And where I've gone, you're going to be as well. I'm going to bring you to myself. And we are going to spend eternity together. That's such an act of love.
It truly is.
So when we're feeling rejected by people, and I joke a lot, but there are moments when we've felt deep rejection. There are moments when we've had severe loss. There are moments that are so hard that bring us to our knees, and we're crying our eyes out, and we don't know maybe where the next meal is going to come from, or where the next piece of help is going to come from, where the next encouragement is going to come from to just move forward, to make it into the next day, because circumstances are hard. We can look to Christ because there's so much hope. He is our hope, and this is not our home. So we have a far greater place to go to. So if we can make it to that next day, the key to making it to the next day is to look to who?
Jesus.
It's Christ, yes.
In those sad moments, and we do have those large crises, these things that everyone around you can see and try to sympathize with you and empathize with you and offer help. And then, I don't know about you, but I've had times where it just seems to be the battle is in my own head.
Right.
And everyone that I'm dealing with, is another one of those terms that probably shouldn't use, but it feels like I'm just not coming across the way that I'm intending to, or
Right.
just something's not right. And when I start seeing the common denominator is Sharon.
Mm-hmm.
Sharon is
Sharon's
I
the
have
problem.
to run
Right.
to Jesus because I know, God, I know this is me right now.
Right.
I know this is me right now, and I need your help, and I need you to help me discern what is the problem, what am I doing?
Right.
And sometimes it's as simple as like, well, Sharon, you didn't take time with me this morning.
Right. And that's, I love what you're saying, because it's like allowing God to lead you to confession. Because we don't see a lot, we're not looking in the mirror with open eyes. A lot of times it's with those rose-colored glasses, and we don't see our own faults, or we don't see, it's like unintentional sin.
Yes.
It's not that I intended to ignore you, God. It's not that I intended to walk on my own. I just have wandering feet, prone to wander. That's such a fantastic song. What is that song? Prone to wander, how I feel it, right? It's like,
Come now, fount of every blessing.
Come thou fount, yes, come thou fount. Oldies, there are some oldies but goodies, and you said you were listening to a song.
I did. It was, and it is well with my soul. Talk about a man that knew deep sorrow and grief.
Yes, shaken to his core, and
That could be a podcast in and of itself.
we could do a podcast dedicated to the backstory of some of the greatest songs that have been written by Christians who understood what it was like to be shook, but who also had an explanation for how they got through it. Because there is a point, I think, when all you know to do is to put your arms around Jesus. The way Jacob, when he wrestled with God, and he finally, when he got it, he wrapped his arms around Christ. When he was wrestling with a man, for Christians, we believe that that was a Christophany.
Yes.
And that he was actually wrestling with Christ. And we believe that Jacob was wrestling with him, and Scripture tells us that he wrapped his arms around his body and wouldn't let him go. And I think for people who have been shaken to the core like that, that's your only option. Because the other is just to drown in it.
Yes, and that's, if you don't have Christ, you see people that really go off the deep end. There's always hope for people, but it is sad to see someone that is so resistant to anything you're trying to tell them, and watching them go through all of these worldly, I want to call them antidotes.
Yes.
You know, like, I'm going to go to this next new fad or this or that, and nothing's going to make them happy.
They're trying to fill that hole inside with all of the worldly things and ideologies, things, the next greatest thing, but none of it satisfies. And we are here as living witnesses to point the way to God and say, we know of a better way because we've been there, done that.
Yes, we have.
We certainly tried to fill that the hole within the heart with anything but God. And we even tried to fill a heart with God without Christ.
Yes.
And it didn't work.
No.
There is only one way, only one door through which one can go, and that is through Christ. And when he says, peace I leave with you, right? It's real.
It is real.
And if you put your faith in Christ, repenting from that old life, repenting from that rebellion against God and doing things your own way and understanding that you've sinned against him, and you turn towards Christ and you grab on to him, determined to never let go, and make him the Lord and Savior of your life, you will never regret that. I have yet to meet a Christian, a true born-again Christian. I'm not talking about all of these deconstructing fools out there. I'm not that, and that's just a fool.
It is.
Because that is not a person who has built their house on the rock. That is a person who built their house on sand. But if for those who have truly been born again, not one have I ever heard say it was the biggest mistake I ever made. It was I have no peace. I have no it doesn't work that way. And like you said, there may be battles within the mind when God in his gracious mercy brings us back and says, whoa, focus. Refocus. Stop looking at what's happening here and here and here and here and here. Focus on me. You're always going to have problems. That is the reality of living in a sinful world, a fallen world. We are always going to have offenses around us. And death is not natural. We weren't meant to be surrounded by death and destruction. When God made everything,
it was perfect.
It was.
It was beautiful and perfect.
Who screwed that up?
Oh, we did, didn't we?
We did.
It is. It's hard to imagine that how wonderful things were. But he tells us not to be anxious for anything.
What a wonderful gift to know that if we're clinging to him, we don't have to be anxious. He gives us something else to focus on, even though mankind messed it up He said, here's your lifeline. So in spite of all of that, I came to save you and redeem you to myself. There's hope.
There is hope. In the Christmas season, it should be all about that, because you think about the sacrifice, and it's laid out from Genesis, of course, to Revelation that Jesus is coming. And then the sacrifice of him coming as a helpless little baby to human parents, that male and female, that did not, they were still sinful creatures, and he submitted to them.
Right.
That entire time. He lived and dealt with everybody around him all the time, but he never changed. He never sinned.
Right.
And he went to the cross for us. And the prayer I believe it's John, when he is praying for everybody before he's going to the cross, it's
beautiful.
Beautiful.
His care.
He loves us, and he never changes, and that's the thing. In a world that is so topsy-turvy, that can tell us right is wrong and wrong is right, there is a steadfastness in Jesus that we don't have anywhere else.
You make a great point there, that the world's ideologies will change and the advice and counsel will always change. It doesn't with God. It is steadfast. His hope is steadfast. His peace is steadfast. But with the world, you will get, well, why don't you try this? And why don't you try that? And why don't you try some yoga? And why don't you try some meditation? And why don't you try this religion? And why don't you look at, reaching your spirit guide? And, there's just so many different self-help books out there. And, why don't you pour yourself into your work, or pour yourself into family, or pour yourself into all of these other things. And then there are, of course, the addictions, like self-pity is a huge addiction. Now, I know we talk about alcohol, and we talk about drugs, and we talk about gambling and those kinds of things, but there are other addictions that we have. Victimization, where I'm the perpetual victim in things, which is self-indulgence and self-pity. Those are horrible addictions.
It's pride in reverse. It truly is, because you are so egocentric that your focus is not on God. It's solely on poor me.
Right. No matter what's overwhelming you or what kind of thing you're addicted to, whether it's, self-love or, shopping or, whatever it is, that this holiday season, take a moment, slow down, and maybe not be so self-reflective, but God-reflective. And maybe that'll help us with a lot of this contentment and comparison and focus on things that are going on, that they're still going to be there.
Jesus says that.
Yes.
You will always have the poor. You will always have the hungry. There will always be there. I am constant. I am with you.
Right. I'm reminded of one more thing I wrote down here. When Jesus was in his ministry here on earth, and a man approached him and said, "I will follow you." And Jesus replied, "With foxes have holes and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head." Now, Jesus was not complaining about his situation. He wasn't going into self-pity. He wasn't thinking that, well, if I put this out here, maybe this dude will invite me into his house and I'll have somewhere to sleep tonight. Like, we can manipulate people, and well, I don't really have this, or I don't have that. You'll find people who will do that to throw some feelers out to see if maybe someone else will pick that up and, provide for me. And that is not what Jesus was doing. He wasn't whining, and he wasn't complaining about the lack of care or comfort or money. He wasn't doing that. What he was saying was that following him would require a sacrifice. And as Christian women, you and I understand that when we got saved, when we were born again, our problems didn't magically disappear. They were still there. The difference was is that we had someone walking with us through that healing process and helping with that. So, but what Jesus was saying was that with that sacrifice, we would need to be content in whatever situation we were in, that we found ourselves, because we cannot serve two masters in this world. We cannot do it. And it is disparaging to God when we decide to serve the master of worry and anxiety and discontentment. It's trying to remove God from the throne of all-powerful, almighty. I put my complete faith and my hope and my trust in him, except with this.
I've been guilty of that. Take it back.
We've all been guilty with that. But there is a place where we can come and confess that.
Yes.
It's important to do that. Don't just ignore it. Don't just put it on the sideline, but confess it and then say, God, your word says in James that if I ask for wisdom, you'll give me that. So I'm asking for wisdom to deal with those things, but I want my peace and my comfort, my love, my hope, my faith, everything is in you. And I want to keep that there.
And don't you find as we mature as Christians, our prayers change a bit to specific, I want this, to, but thy will be done.
That's the key. That's the key to getting what you want.
It
Is to say, what I want is what you want, God. So therefore, I know it'll happen, whatever you want. So on earth as it is in heaven.
And in your timing.
Yeah.
And you don't need me to help you with the timing.
Okay, now I have an issue. Because I want a quick fix.
Me too. And that's really hard because, like we've spoken about specifically women, men are fixers. But women also want to help our children. We want to do things. We want to, I'll fix it. I'll write you a check or I'll, whatever it is. And it's not, in the long run, we've learned it's not helping. That's not helping. It's a Band-Aid.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Instead of pointing people to Christ, because we can end up loving people right out of salvation.
Yes, we can.
By having all the answers for them, all of the physical answers for them, and trying to make everything better for them, when for some people, coming to Christ involves that struggle.
It does, and pain.
Yes. And we were promised, that's you and I are doing this study, and one of the things that male and female were promised after the fall was pain. Not everything's going to go your way, man. Not everything is going to, you're going to struggle. The ground is going to struggle back at you, right? So when you plant seed, the thorns and the thistles are going to come up. And maybe, folks, instead of trying to bubble wrap everything, we just need to understand that the thorns and thistles are going to come. But God didn't say, I'm going to abandon you in that.
No, he said, I will never leave nor forsake you.
Yes. That's a good verse.
It's wonderful. It's one of those that always comes to mind, is that he will never leave nor forsake you. Even when you've stumbled and come back and said, oh, Lord, please forgive me and forgive my mouth for what I've done. And he will never leave nor forsake us.
Yeah.
He
you
is
do
always
that too?
there.
Yeah. You have mouth issues?
I have to turn to James a lot.
You got a fiery tongue. I do too. That's probably the one thing that gets me in trouble the most. Yeah, my mouth. We were talking about that yesterday. Yes, confession time. Folks, we just want to say, as you're going into the Christmas holidays, be of good cheer. Christ has overcome the world. It's going to be okay.
It is going to be okay, and he is the reason for the season.
All right, folks. Well, I'm Wendee Omer.
And I'm Sharon Pierce.
And we want to remind you that you can
handle the truth.
Bye.
Where's the pen?